We're going to talk about security operations centres for about half an hour, 40 minutes. But first I'm going to sort of say hello and say who I am. So I'm Rob DeMain, I'm the CEO of a company called e2e Assure. We're 4 years old and I founded the company. I've been doing this sort of 20 years now. Started off working for RM Education. Does anyone know RM? Research machines? Yeah, probably a name from the past. So I started building computer networks for schools back in '97 and then moved on to building internet gateways for schools. So sort of keeping schools safe was quite important back then. And from there I've worked for various startup companies, mainly working in banking and then defence. And then in 2013 I started e2e Assure to do SOC as a service predominantly. What I'm going to talk about is why SOC as a service, but first, presumably everyone knows what a SOC is, Security Operations Centre. For those that don't, it's always some people, okay? So there's always a people aspect to this, some analysts. It's blue teaming. Everyone heard the term blue teaming? So this is defensive operations, not offensive. So we're talking about defending, and it'll have a lot of technology in it, and a SOC that they'll be using. But fundamentally, a SOC's got three things, okay? It's people, and it's processes, and it's technology. In different measures at different times, but fundamentally, if you guys are going to go about building operations, then you're looking at each of those things, okay? And without each of those things, your SOC's not going to work properly, okay? I think one of the things that I've learned is one of the first things you can do in a SOC is build an incident response plan and have a decent set of contacts for people to phone. And that's not a technology thing, that's a really simple process thing. And just having an incident response plan with contact details is a good place to start with a SOC. What can a SOC do for your business? So if you start with the fact that everyone's going to be vulnerable to attacks, then you're going to need to have something to look after that or to monitor that. So really what you should be asking a SOC to do is constantly monitor your organisation. Non-stop, 24/7 should be where you start to think about doing this. And you need to be able to detect things, investigate things, and these days I would say that a SOC should really look at ways of stopping problems. Okay, not so much predicting them, although that's possible. If you do red on blue exercises, you can basically find holes and patch them. But we like to see our SOC being able to stop an attack, actually do something about it. And I think the days of SOCs simply monitoring and sending you a monthly report or telling you 8 hours later that you've had an incident somewhere are kind of over. And that's not really what you should aim for. Okay, you want something much more integrated. Some things that probably aren't obvious. We do a lot of trials of SOC, so people trial our service all the time. And one of the outputs they get from that is visibility into what does the problem look like. Have we got a problem? And often until you have a SOC, you don't know if you've got a problem. Rather like the drone guys were demonstrating, you often need evidence to collect before you can make a business case for a SOC. But the problem is without a SOC, you often don't have the evidence you need. You're just basically winging it a lot of the time. And it can help you with compliance, but it's not really the focus of a SOC, or it shouldn't be. And I'll run you through the reason why I created a SOC as a service business. And hopefully that's going to give you guys data that if you're building a SOC, you can use this. There's lessons learned here that is interesting to anybody who's building a SOC or is running a SOC. Because I've been doing this 20 years, and there's a reason why we built this in a certain way. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the cloud. Does that change the SOC? Is it hard? Is it easy? A little bit about GDPR. So when I started building SOCs for the companies, it was really telcos, large defence organisations and banking that had SOCs. Nobody else had a SOC. It was seen as a big expensive thing. So our mission really was to make it affordable, make a SOC for everybody. An SME can have a SOC, that's a great idea, why not? Can we take all that expensive stuff, mash it up and make something that's consumable for a much smaller scale? So if you look at the problem, the traditional technology, okay? So I'm going to break the problem down into technology, process and people. and try to identify a lot of the problems that we've seen and we've tried to fix with technology. As a business, trying to get a SIM and deploy it to all my customers that look completely different is really difficult, okay? And the time to value is too long. That's what we call time to value is too long. So if I want to deploy a service to a customer and get paid for it, I want value to be emerging really quickly. The problem with a lot of security monitoring software is it takes you a long time to get value from it. But who's deployed a SIM and said it's actually got to a point of value quickly? It's not how it works, is it? You have. Okay. So you've got the experience to know how to do it. The problem is the industry is not telling you how hard it is, are they? When you set in this journey. So you start off on this journey with this technology, and the technology is driving you into a way of working that it wants you to. It's conform or die approach, and your SOC might not want to work the way that technology does. So a technology-focused SOC is a bad idea because you're going to get forced to do something in a way that will frustrate the people that use it. So we find that good analysts faced with traditional software get very frustrated. And the business gets frustrated because they've got no visibility of the SOC. Is this SOC, this software, helping me detect bad things? How does your business know this SOC's doing stuff without good visibility? A lot of software doesn't give you that. And to be perfectly honest, a lot of this stuff's quite old-fashioned. A lot of the software that's being rolled out is quite an old-fashioned. A lot of SOC teams in businesses. So what's interesting is most of our customers have SOCs already, yet they still engage with us to provide SOC as a service. Yeah, we have some that don't have anything at all. We do it all. But we have some that, well, most of them already have SOCs. And the problem is that their existing team is just way too small. Who thinks they've got enough staff in their SOC? Okay, that's a bit interesting. There's two people. Who has a SOC? So, okay, what was that, about 20% think they've got enough people? So generally what we see is that the team's too little because people don't realize how many people you actually need to run a SOC in a 24/7 state. We also find that the SOC's often in a silo. Do you know what I mean? They're not really integrated with the rest of the business, and there may even be a separate room somewhere, and your SOC needs to be much more integrated into what's happening. And we also see a big problem with recruitment. So there's a general cyber skills, isn't there, really? Cyber skills shortage. But really, most people who we see want to be red team. They want to be pen testers. The talent pool, the available resource pool for good blue teamers is really quite small. I don't know if you noticed that, but everyone wants to be a pen tester, a hacker. They don't want to be a blue team defender. There's a much smaller talent pool. And I think that compounds a problem. And often businesses buy more technology to try and cover up the fact they can't recruit more people. And we hear it all the time. Oh, I'll buy this AI because then I won't need any more people. And actually what they're doing is they're building more technology that needs more people to run, therefore making the problem worse. So they don't invest properly in people. I think that's quite important.
So I guess a question just on
Sure.
that point. Do you think that essentially the salary scale between blue teaming and red teaming are incorrect? Because I personally believe that blue teaming for the majority of people is far harder than red teaming is.
Yep.
There might be some very, very good red teamers out there, but overall I think the job is a lot easier than the blue team, which is a heck of a lot harder.
Yeah, so it's much more exciting generally to be a red teamer.
Yeah.
Because
you're working, you can just go on to something else.
Absolutely.
You've got to stay with it.
And it's a different mindset, and it's that persistent mindset. And there's a character and a kind of a sort of profile we look for. And it's people who don't give up easily who make good blue teamers. I'm going to talk about how we recruit people and the kind of characteristics we look for. But there really is a mindset of, and I'll cover in a bit, just like a fire brigade, a SOC, is that a lot of the time there's no fires. Whereas if you're a red teamer, you're constantly testing stuff and it's exciting, right? I'll kind of get to that. And I think also with SOCs, everyone talks about automation, but I think traditional SOCs with traditional software really struggle to make any headway into automation, or what we would call automation anyway. So what is a SOC as a service? What's the point in a SOC as a service? So when we started this business, we developed the whole thing from scratch, including the software, because of the reasons that I've just outlined. And the whole point of it is that we want to do the hard work for the organisation, okay? We don't want to replace the organisation SOC. That's not really what we should be doing. We should be working in partnership to augment an organisation and take away all the pain and give them only things they need to worry about. But there should always be people in the organisation who we're doing the business with who've got the expertise to deal with the fine end of that spike. Does that make sense? So really, most of the time, what we're talking to customers about is how we can help take away the bulk of the nonsense. And it's really about hygiene at this level. How do you recruit SOC people? Okay, I just mentioned that it's really hard to find SOC people. The way we went about it was to use, everyone heard the SANS Cyber Academy? I know some government people in the room. So the 2015 Academy, 30,000 people applied to do a 2-month residential training course by SANS. The government sponsored that, helped put that together. I think 33 graduated, and they were put through a 2-month residential training course in Wales, trained by James Line, all the best SANS instructors. And then they did 3 SANS qualifications, 3 in 2 months. And I think, well, Simon was one of them. Simon sat right here. And all of them that graduated came in the top 5 or 3% of anybody in the world who'd ever taken the SANS qualification in terms of the scoring.
We actually got investigated by DA.
Yeah, so Guy was quite interested to know how they scored so highly. The chap that came the highest was a parking attendant, am I correct, or is that rumour?
He was an admin. He was an admin for a parking organiser.
Right, okay. So out of that one recruitment round, at the time we recruited 5 people in graduation, and now we've got 9 of them, I think. 9 of them work in e2e Assure, which is more than any other government organisation or bank who was trying to recruit them. Because we're a young SME, we just went and bought them all. And then since then, they've come to join us because we've created a culture which attracts Blue Team. I'm going to talk about that later. And then the 2017 Academy, we've recruited 3, is it? And the 4th is joining. 4th on the way. So those are some tricks. Cybersecurity challenge is another key thing for us. We've got 1 so far from the challenge, am I correct? These are young kids on apprentice schemes generally, and we start an apprentice scheme. But what I'm trying to get to is that really it's quite hard to find good blue teamers. And I don't know if you all know those things. And I don't want you to, but I'd recommend that you look at these schemes really closely if you want to find talent. But what I'd also recommend is that you don't just need talent, you need experience in a SOC. Okay, so a lot of the talent we have is quite raw talent, and it needs to sit with experience. And I just want to make that point. I'm going to make it again later on. Not particularly good lighting in here. But one of the other ways that we engage to attract talent is by doing lots of B conferences and having our guys do hacking displays and things. So if you want to attract talent to your SOC, you need to not do what I'm doing, talk to CISOs. You need to do demonstrations in the side rooms at conferences and B conferences and things like that. And occasionally you get some interested people come to watch. That's Boris. I don't think we'll be recruiting him. But you get the idea. This is Simon doing a Wi-Fi hacking demo at a conference. And what generally happens is that people who are kind of interested will talk to us in the sidelines, and then we'll try and recruit them. This is how we recruit. And it's not recruitment consultants, clearly. What qualifications does a SOC have? Okay. Well, we think that SANS is the real answer to that. And I don't work for SANS, I've got no affiliation with them. But if you look at how we operate a SOC, the kind of SANS qualifications are really important to us. So if someone's trained in SANS, they can use our SOC software instantly because it follows along logically with that training. Everyone who joins a business has to do a GSEC in the first 3 months, or they don't make it any further. Yeah, so we're quite keen on this. And everyone must do a SANS qualification every year, and we pay for that, and we send them around the world to do that. We think it's that important that they can do these things. They can pick and choose what they want to do, right? We don't stipulate, but this is important. But I think it's also important, and I think Simon's a good example of that, is that that's all good, but actually you need business people who understand real networks and ancient IT systems and Solaris, Windows NT and stuff. If you don't have them too, then you're not really going to be very effective, because cyber is not, it's an infrastructure problem, it's a development problem, it's a server problem, it's an application issue. You need people to understand things like SharePoint, business stuff. And if they're just malware focused, how are they ever going to understand problems in an organisation that are beyond that? So don't recruit a load of kids basically, put them in the room and expect to be really good at SOC business. you need experience too, right? One of the things that I didn't realise until we went 24/7 in 2015 was the importance of building a culture in a SOC business. And what I mean by that is honesty and collaboration to begin with. Something the new guy that I put in charge of the SOC started was a whoops culture. Anyone know what a whoops culture is? Have you heard of that before? So if anybody in the business makes a mistake, they have to email the whole company and say what they've done wrong. Yeah? Why are we doing that? Okay, because we want a culture of honesty. We don't punish that person, and we actually reward it. We reward a whoops, because actually someone's told me something that could have been put under the carpet. In a SOC business, in a blue team, you can never have that situation in your business. Yeah, you have to disclose problems. We have to disclose problems to our customers if we've not done a very good job, because otherwise we'll really fail at this. I don't know if you go back in history, but remember the RSA got breached? Remember that? And it was a disaster, wasn't it? A massive security company. But actually they responded really well, didn't they? Because they were honest and they were really straightforward about how they got hacked and what the problem was. And that's really important, that if we're being a SOC and we don't find something, we tell the customer that we messed up. Right? And your SOC should tell your business that they messed up, as well as tell them about the good stuff they've done. Okay? Because otherwise this isn't going to work. And collaboration is really important too. No, I'll never sit and tell you that you can outsource all your security to a company like mine and it's going to work. It's not. It needs your collaboration. It's always a two-way thing. And people kind of miss that, I think. One of the other things that we've done, and I'd encourage businesses running SOCs to look at this, is a 4-day week. We started this concept for the SOC, but we've extended it to the rest of the business. That means I pay you for a 5-day shift, but you do 4. On your 5th day, you do what you want. Hopefully, that is related to a field of cyber research, okay? Now, the reason why we do that is because you heard of snow blindness or breach fatigue, alert fatigue? Yeah? By the 5th day, analyst is rubbish. I'm not being funny, but the 5th day of a shift, they're not very effective. I don't know if you've seen this before, but you have this thing, yeah.
Can I interrupt? Is that actually based on your experience and
yeah, so
the 5th day is
so keeping people interested in their job means that you can't make them run a 40-hour week doing one thing, okay? That does get boring, right? And if you're recruiting talent, they'll get bored and they'll move on. Our solution to that is to give them 20% of their time to do whatever the heck they want. And generally that is some cyber research project that they love doing. It might even be some red teaming. Now, that benefits the business in 2 ways. One, it stops breach fatigue or alert fatigue, which is frustrating when you see performance drop. And the other thing it does is it drives innovation back into the business. So some of our greatest new tricks in our SOC have been developed by analysts on their 5th day, who've gone off and thought, well, I'll tell you what, Rob, I'm going to show you something really cool. Give me 6-7 weeks and look at this thing. Look what we could add this into our service, couldn't we? And because we own the development of it, yes, we can. We can bring that thing into our service. So what it's actually doing is it's giving you an R&D function, and it's building capacity. And the other thing it does as a 4-day week is it builds capacity naturally in a SOC. So rather like a fire brigade, there aren't fires all the time. And when you're not having a fire, you need to practice and do rehearsals and drills, keep that fire engine nice and clean, make sure you know where your kit is. A lot of SOC work is about hygiene, about asset management, and it's about doing the basics right. And if you're operating a 4-day week, you have slack in your schedule that if there is a fire, you've got people to hand in buckets, because you often need them. WannaCry is an example. 2 or 3 of our customers have a problem like that. We need everybody we've got. If you're running a SOC, what should you look for in terms of success? I'm not talking about catching hackers or stopping things like that. I'm looking for more signs that you've got the cultural aspects correct, okay? So I look for, and I look through tickets, and I'm looking for the way the customers are engaging with the SOC team. And I'm looking for the way they're terming, the terminology they're using to engage my team. And if they start by saying, e2e, sort this, e2e, look at this, you know, and they start moving towards, hello team, you know, that's a really good indicator, isn't it? That they've got the collaboration thing and they're seeing this service as part of the team. And I think even if it's your own SOC business, you should look for the way things are being communicated between the consumers of your SOC, which is other parts of your business, and your SOC. Because the more positive that can be, the better things will work. Staff turnover is another good indicator. I mean, do you guys measure staff turnover in your security business? Yeah, you should do, definitely. If you go to all the effort and expense of recruiting people and they disappear, you need to analyse that. And you need to look really hard at what it is and what the cost of that is. And is it better to have a 4-day week and not lose people, or try and recruit these people again constantly? Add it up. And also, if small problems are getting treated seriously in a SOC, if little things are fussed over, that's another really good indicator. Okay? Do you know if you look at hospitals or nursing, if people are whinging about little things, it means there's nothing really big and bad going on. Does that make sense? So I think that's a really good indicator if people are complaining about small things. And you have regular whoops emails, but it's not a big deal. So, we'll talk a little bit about technology, okay, and why we built our own technology. Well, the first thing is that you can't go installing agents anywhere anymore. It's a nonsense. Every modern operating system has the instrumentation you need to run your SOC, okay? Do not look at a technology that you need to install agents on your endpoints to do your SOC business. That's not needed anymore. Yeah? Anyone heard of Microsoft Sysmon? Hands up, you know, heard of Microsoft Sysmon? It's holy grail. Yeah? Understand how to deploy a standard Microsoft-based event collection architecture, add Sysmon, and you'll be way up there in the scale of sophistication without any agents on your boxes. The same thing's true with Linux and Solaris. The commands on the operating system that you can run to collect the data you need are all there already. Yeah? This is not magic, guys. This is about using the instrumentation from your existing equipment in a sensible way to get really good outcomes. And if you're looking at a SOC, I mean, I'm doing it as a service, so I need to be able to cope with on-prem or cloud, right? And if you're doing it for your business and your business is both, you need to make sure your technology can understand both. So in the cloud, as I'll talk about, it's slightly different. If you're going to do a SOC, you've got to focus on these things: playbooks and practice. If you've not got good playbooks and good processes, all this becomes a bit irrelevant. Yeah, and the more you can automate, the better. But fundamentally, when you're not fighting fires, you should be practicing fighting fires and building playbooks so that when a fire comes, you're following a predefined routine quickly and effectively. And often they're as simple as contacting the right people quickly and setting up a conference call number. But they might be more sophisticated than that. They might be shutting down network ports to contain something. But I can't really stress the fact that by using standard technology, instrumentation, and building some good processes, you can get quite far without buying any SIM or SOC technology, right? This slide I've added this morning just to try and focus on the cloud, and does that change what a SOC needs to do? Does it present challenges, or is it a good thing? Well, the first point to make about cloud is that if you're going to use cloud, then your data is everywhere. Okay, so it's moved out of your boundary, and you need to get used to that. Okay, so you need to adopt that philosophy. And you need to identify who's responsible for what. So in your SaaS service, what is it they're responsible for exactly? And what are you responsible for in terms of the security of that? And same with the infrastructure and the platform. Get that bit right. And often we see it's a hybrid story. If you see that, but it's often a hybrid, it's a mixture of things. There's some really good news about cloud though, because a lot of the time they're taking away a lot of the problems that you don't need to worry about anymore. And often there's really good instrumentation you can get out of cloud APIs. Office 365's got a great API that can tell you all about what's happening with your Office 365 system. AWS has got awesome instrumentation that SOCs can use. So don't worry too much about it, just understand that it just changed the game, but it doesn't sort of end it. What's this got to do with GDPR? So this is the General Drone Protection Regulation, as we discussed yesterday. I think for a SOC business, GDPR needs to be taken seriously, even though it is a buzzword, right? There are fines available, potentially. You can get fined for breaches. Is it a reality check as well? Is actually the ICO telling you that you should be doing this, but now you're going to get fined instead of before where you weren't going to get fined, so you could kind of get away with it? Is it a reality check? GDPR? Does anyone think it might be a bit of a, for us all, a bit of a reality check? I think it's probably a reality check, yeah. But it might help focus decision makers, so it may help build your business case as well, if there's actually a fine attached to something. The point I want to make really is that all the stuff you see on the internet,
Sorry, the GDPR in relating to, so is it around breach notification, or is there something more specific that you're focusing on?
No, I think if the SOC's aim is to detect breaches and respond to them,
Yeah.
that was okay before, and there was no particular requirement to report that to anybody, was there?
Yeah.
You could deal with that yourself. It could take you 3 weeks, it could take you 6 months. GDPR's changed that perspective. You've now got 72 hours, okay, and you could get fined quite a lot of money if you get hacked. If you get hacked and you haven't done due diligence, then things are going to get worse for you, aren't they? Because you're going to get fined at the high end of the scale. If you've done good due diligence and you've had a good SOC and you've been a good operation, you still got hacked, they're going to give you less of a fine. So there's actually a business case we can draw out of GDPR that can focus attention on the SOC. And again, there's nothing new about this. This is do everything you should do, minimize the amount of GDPR data you've got, really minimize it, get the rest of it done, but then protect the stuff that you have. Non-stop 24/7, because if you can stop the breach, then the problem goes away, right? Yeah? If you can respond and report quickly what happened, your fine is going to be small, if any. And that's why it changes things. It just gives a little bit of weight to the argument, doesn't it? And again, if you look at everything that's happened, I've got pages of these from my iPhone I've put together this morning. These are all breaches in GDPR terms. Every single one of these things you've heard on the internet recently are all breaches, and they're very lucky it's not 2018, aren't they? Bloody hell, they really are. I mean, because any of our data is in Equifax, right? What was the recent number? I can't remember what the number was. How many? 1.6.
No, 1.6 worldwide.
Right, so what could the fine be for Equifax if this was post-2018? I don't know. Maybe they wouldn't fine them. Maybe they would. I don't know the answers to that. All I can say is that GDPR data is everywhere. All these are breaches. I also want to make the point, I think this is quite an important point, that some of our customers have really sophisticated SOCs. Yeah, and that's great, and it's good, and we should aim for greatness always. But we should also be aware that there's always something new. Who's seen the Microsoft DDE exploit? The DDE exploit. Anyone know what this is? I'll try and explain it if it gets wrong. So if Word has macros enabled, it's bad, right? So you don't enable macros. Well, a DDE exploit does not need macros to be enabled to still exploit you, right? What that means is that all the good advice you've told your customers is now irrelevant. Because with DDE, it exploits you anyway, even if they follow the advice you've been telling them for years. And Microsoft say that's a feature. And the example here, I don't have the example, but I've got a great example of the security researchers on the internet showing you how they can use DDE exploits. As soon as the document's opened, it can run PowerShell, it can run Calc, it can download any malware. And I think about 1 of 60 AV vendors detects it. And they're really rubbish at it. And my point really is that there's always something new, isn't there? There's always some new trick coming along that defeats us all. Or there'll be some way to trick your users. Have you seen this Apple thing, which is the real Apple message, which is the fake? Everyone's seen this? There's always a new way to trick your users, isn't there? So if you're going to build a SOC business, then you need to be prepared that you're not going to get it 100%, and that's the kind of point I want to make. That you try to improve things, but you can't fix things. Who knows about CCleaner? Put your hands up if you've heard of CCleaner. Fantastic.
Okay. Is it CC Cleaner or CC?
Is it CC Cleaner or C Cleaner?
Okay, it is C Cleaner, but I call it CC Cleaner.
Why is C Cleaner the SOC's worst nightmare? Anyone take a guess? I've kind of told you a lot on this slide, but why is CCleaner bigger news to us than this stupid Wi-Fi thing?
Because it would be detected, because they actually backdoored one of the updates.
Yes.
Exactly like, or very similar to how.
Mark, use the mic.
All right, so
It
Yeah.
got into the software development chain.
Absolutely.
It became trusted, and everybody trusted it because they thought they could.
Do you know there's a bigger issue with CCleaner?
What?
Which is that for quite a few versions, it's actually not freeware, not
Right.
for commercial use. So a lot of people have been installing it.
So that actually shouldn't have been, yeah.
And forgetting the fact that if you grab that exploit report which lists all the domains that actually had CCleaner installed, and you were Piriform and you want to send the cache, you can then contact these people and say, where is my corporate license, please?
Yeah, that's a really good
Because
point.
you should be beaconing back to me telling me you've got to install your corporate networks.
So we know what CCleaner was looking for, don't we? Yeah? What was CCleaner looking for? Only if you were part of these organisations would it move on to its next phase. Okay, I'm going to talk you through this really quickly, okay? So if you want to test a SOC, there's the ability of a SOC to detect an APT, all right, I'm going to use that word. Use CCleaner, create CCleaner. You can create this, Simon can create this. You can copy this problem. Injecting malware into blank space in a trusted executable is not hard, all right? Why is it so interesting? Well, this got out to X million users and no one knew that it was infected with malware. And what was happening was, this is thanks to Cisco Talos, right? You run CCleaner on your machine, yeah?
Okay, very briefly, can we share these slides later on?
I'll share them, I'll take out some of the quotes, but yeah, I'll share them, yeah. So normally I can do a demo of this, right, of CCleaner. Because what we did when we saw this, we built this in our lab and tried to work out how a SOC could detect this generically, because it's not easy. So what happens is, normal CCleaner runs as you'd expect it to, and it does its perfectly good job of tidying your PC up. It waits about 10 minutes, and it does something else, moves on a little bit, loads a little DLL file that's actually a Symantec AV DLL file, trusted. Okay, does something, all right, that's fine. Waits another 10 minutes or so, then it moves on, okay? When we first heard about this looked like it was dead easy, okay? What do I mean by easy? So Talos posted these IOCs, look. Everyone know what an IOC is? Indicator of compromise. Something your SOC can use to find this problem, yeah? Look for that IP address in your logs now. Look for these domain names. Look for these file hashes. They're easy IOCs. Your SOC should be able to find, you should be able to go play a game with your SOC and ask them, random domains, can you find these random things? This should be easy for your SOC, right? If it's not, it's a point in your SOC. The way we would handle this then is that we'd basically make a threat brief, which is something the SOC creates centrally and sends to our customers saying, yep, we know about CCleaner, we've sent IOCs down to your system, okay? And we put these IOCs out, I'm not going to go into it. Anyone see MISP? You know what MISP is? Yeah, so we use a MISP system and our analysts can create these IOCs. By the way, this is threat intelligence, another way of explaining it, yeah? And a lot of the threat intelligence we find is on Twitter, platforms like CISP, and it's not from a feed we're buying, okay? I'm not saying buying feeds is a bad idea, that's a good idea. I'm just telling you that at the cutting edge of an outbreak, an AV vendor has never updated their signatures, 2, 3, 4 weeks maybe, yeah? And we're talking about in minutes here. And at that time, your SOC should be building IOCs in some system and deploying them to your sensors in some way, right? If they're not, then they're not doing threat intelligence correctly. So we push them out, you've got alertable or you've got blocking, right? A block list, again, is something that's posted on pages like CISP. You should block these things now because they're malware, right? It's another use of this system. And what it'll do, it'll hunt, or we'll hunt for live traffic that matches, but we'll also go historically. If you can't go historically through your data for months, you're missing the point. CCleaner was out there for months, and then it was stopped and cleansed. So you need to go back in time. You need a time machine in your SOC. You must record those IOCs, those checksums, and those IP addresses in your logs over time. Otherwise, you'll never know historically if you had this problem. Does that make sense? That all looked really easy initially, and we whacked that out within minutes, and everyone's happy. And 2 days later, I think it's 2 days later, yeah, 2 days later, we start to realize there were specialized secondary payloads. Yeah, the analysis goes, actually, the first stage malware was those IOCs, right? The second stage malware was actually much more interesting, and no one knows what that is because the command and control server was taken down and didn't have enough disk space. Have you heard the story here? Yeah. The second stage drops were unknown, but when they took down the server, law enforcement got hold of the command and control server, right? This is where the operational IT of the hacker business got it wrong. They built the server too small, and it filled its disk space. It was in the cloud, right? And they used PHP and they didn't encrypt it. And law enforcement grabbed it. But the problem is when they grabbed it, they only had a tiny window of what was in it. It didn't have its full 3 months of what this thing had been doing. This is how the malware worked, okay? Look for a certain domain so that the malware guys in charge were entering these names into the control server. The CCleaner was looking at the machine and getting the domain name and sending it to the control server, and it was checking if it was in this list of organizations. If it wasn't, it would just stop. If it was, it would then give a massive software and asset inventory of the machine it was on, because CCleaner can do that, right? Antivirus is the perfect way to collect data about a machine, isn't it? Compromise your supply chain, and you have AV running as root on your box. So what it then did was it sent a full asset inventory to these people who went, a Samsung domain PC, great, and it's running Windows 7 and Java 4.9. I'm going to now make a piece of malware for that. And it's running this AV. I'm going to make a bit of malware this AV can't detect. And my APT team, the bad guys, are going to make this malware so that we know that machine will not detect it. That is a problem, right? We don't know what those stage 2s were to this day, right? And that's a problem for a SOC, okay? That is challenging for a SOC. Equifax getting hacked with 38 root shells on their box is easy. Yeah, that should never happen. This is what the real hard stuff is. Okay, if you want to test your SOC, recreate this as an instant response. Try and find CCleaner. Because what you're looking for here, legitimate binary package, it's knitted into a legitimate piece of AV software. Simon will tell you where, but hidden in check bits that are looking for code overflows even. Even the people that wrote the AV software missed it the first time, even when they looked at the code. And there's silly IOCs now. IOCs like registry entries that seem not very interesting. IOCs that are DLL names, yeah, and process names. And all of a sudden your SOC's going, well, how could I find the existence of a DLL at a certain point in time that was spawned by this process? That's really hard, isn't it? But Microsoft Sysmon would tell you. PS-EF or PSAUX on the Linux box would tell you if you collected that data over time. Yeah? You don't need advanced APT software to detect an APT, people. You really don't. And that's the kind of point I'm trying to make. I want to step back to a few takeaways about what we've learned in this SOC business and try and reinforce the point in a few ways. For intern people, really important, context. So if you have intelligence and you can't act on it, it's irrelevant and pointless intelligence. Does that make sense? What is the point in knowing that a process called CCleaner is bad if you can't detect where the process runs? If you know that CCleaner version 1.8, as installed on the 5th of May 2017, is bad, can you go and find out which machines have that installed right now? Yeah? You should be able to, because that's about asset and software inventory. Those are things you need to ask. But what I want to do is look at this execution chain again. You can't see that because this projector is rubbish. But what it does is, it runs CCleaner, waits 10 minutes, and then goes, is the current user logged on as admin? If not, stop. How do you defeat this APT, people? Don't log on as admin. Yeah? Don't log on as admin and go on the internet. Right? This is not really clever, is it? This is 90% of malware is stopped if you don't let your users have local admin or domain admin and go on the internet. That's normal stuff. You guys have been saying this for years, right? This is what you've been telling people. This is a really good example of, well, if we didn't do that, and we don't, therefore this wouldn't have affected us anyway. So this is a storm in a teacup, in a kind of way, isn't it? It's actually more sophisticated than that because it would actually look for exploits that would give it local admin. But just to give you the context, a lot of the time, good IS is what you're after, and it's hygiene, right? And if your SOC is helping you make good hygiene, then you're going to get a long way really quickly. And I'm going to use this. Who remembers MRSA? Yeah? Remember all the nonsense about super pills, super bugs, £10 a super pill, and we'll all get disinfected, all be cured. And I tell you, that's not what stopped MRSA. It was actually soap and hand washing by the nurses on the ground who dealt with viruses all day long. And they know that it's hygiene that fixes problems. And IT is very similar to a hospital in many ways. Okay, they might have changed some of the doors to have brass because that killed the germs, but they changed their hand washing routine. Yeah, and that's really the message we've got with IT, isn't it? That we can all focus on crazy magic solutions and look for silver bullets, but don't do that if you're running a SOC business. Yeah, focus on the basics and you'll get a long way. This is Ian Levy. Everyone knows who Ian Levy is. Grab this off the register, but I think many people here will know. A lot of the time, what NCSE are trying to do is to tell people to get the basics right. Okay, and that may be quite a hard answer sometimes, but it's really important. And don't look for silver bullets. And here's another well-known commentator. I'll say it another way. This is about Equifax. Equifax had...
Equifax deserves a special Hall of Fame.
So they had every Gartner quadrant piece of technology in the world, yeah, because they spent money on cyber and they didn't notice all those web shells. Yeah.
The interesting piece is that Equifax were compliant.
There's another example. Yeah. So I'll try and boil this down.
They're a member of FSR's, which is one of the most regulated sectors, and they were compliant.
So shall I explain how you detect a web shell? Log onto a server and type W. Look at the result. That's not hard, is it? Yeah? If they'd have done that, they'd have noticed half of the world's connected to them by SSH. Other stuff we get wrong all the time. Yeah? The industry does it to itself, doesn't it, in a way? It kind of drives a lot of nonsense. We're worried about this Wi-Fi attack, aren't we? And this DDE exploit exists. What's going to affect our users more likely is them clicking on a document, isn't it, with this DDE exploit in it, not this Wi-Fi problem, right? So I think...
But the Wi-Fi problem had a website, it had a press release, it had a logo. You can't do a proper thing unless you're the logo.
And you've got a name.
Yeah, and press release.
Microsoft DDE exploit is not very cool, is it?
And you notice, by the way, how the whole thing broke its embargo. It was meant to go at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it actually, which is 12 o'clock UK, and it actually launched about 10 because all the embargoes broke.
So I completely agree with all this. All I'm trying to say is that, like, if you're running a SOC, you've got to really, everyone in this industry needs to just sanity check all the noise and think about what the real problems are. Some lessons learned then, finally to finish off. I know it's time to get checked out and have a break. Just keep saying it over and over again, but a lot of this is hygiene and getting stuff right. Having the right data collected in the right points is not that difficult, really. What we also like to do with our business is get customers, consumers to test services. Yeah, I think the issue with SOC is there is no crest or check, or there's no certified SOC, is there? There's no such thing, and that's kind of frustrating because there's no way to measure SOCs against each other or get one that's certified by GCHQ or something like that, and that's a problem for the industry. So
They're trying to do it.
they're trying to do it.
They've been trying to do it for about 3 years now. They've not quite got there because most of the actual SOCs are shite.
Ed, so that's completely correct. All I want to say to you, please, if you're looking at outsourcing, test your outsourcer before you sign any contract. Yeah, if you go to MITRE, is it MITRE? I've got a great link I was going to share. Awesome SOC tests. Awesome SOC tests. Don't trust this stuff. Yeah. MITRE. I will find the link later on. And again, when you're engaging with, well, so final thing, when you're engaging with SOC people, they'll get you into a rigmarole to monitor everything, everywhere, always. Focus on business risk. Yeah, and start with that. Boil it down to what's important. Start by doing a good job of that, and then spread out. That's it for me.